Hello students, in first lecture we have seen use of form tag, use of input tag inside form tag, different attributes of input tag, use of meta tag. In today's lecture we will learn about CSS. CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. Cascading Style Sheet. Why we need cascading style sheet? Why we need CSS? We use HTML to design web page. Why we use web page? To create website. Website is collection of web pages. It is not just a page. It's collection of pages, web pages. If we want to do change in that web page or in different web pages, we need to search and we need to do the changes on that web pages. But by using CSS, we can reduce our work. We can change look and feel of that web page or web pages by just doing change in single file. So for that purpose, we use CSS just to reduce our work. By using CSS, we can change the font type, font style, color, background color, etc. What is the syntax for CSS? Syntax is how we can use. For this purpose, we need a selector, and the selector has a declaration block. The selector has, this is declaration block. Declaration block which consists property and value of that property. You can use single property, you can use multiple property. If you want to use different properties, you can differentiate it by using semicolon. Selector means what? Selector is any type of element. For example, H1, P, H2, H6, whatever the tag you want to use, that tag you can use as selector. What do we mean by property? Property is nothing but attribute. Property means what? Attribute. For example, color, font size, border, etc. And value of this attribute means what is the value of the property? The value of the attribute. For example, if I use color, then value will be red, blue, black, green, anything. If I use font size as a property, then I can use 11, 10, means number, pixel. This is the unit. Pixel is the unit. 11 pixel, 20 pixel, 25 pixel, whatever the size of the font I want to give, I can use that value here. Border, single, double, dotted, etc. Whatever the border value I want to give, I can give there. So, for example, if I want to use H1 as selector, then I can use here H1 as a selector, curly braces into curly braces, color red, and other property, for example, border double. What is the meaning of this line? The meaning of this line is, in HTML page, wherever I use H1 tag, the text inside that H1 tag will have red color and double border. Whenever I use this one, then in that HTML page, wherever I use H1 tag, the text inside will have text color as red and border of that text will be double. CSS is of three types. CSS is of three types. First one, inline CSS. Second one, embedded or internal CSS. Embedded or internal CSS. And third one is external CSS. External CSS. What is the meaning of inline CSS? In inline CSS, inside body tag, wherever I use this h1 tag, in that tag I can use style as an attribute. In inline CSS, whenever I'm going to write the code whatever I want to display on a web page, it should be inside the body tag. In body tag, whenever I write that code, for example, I want to use h1 tag, I can use style as an attribute equal to in double quote whatever the properties I want to display. For example, color red. For example, color red. In that, this is an inline CSS. Then end of h1 tag, end of body tag. How can I write code for inline CSS? Inside body tag, h1 style as an attribute. I have to use style as an attribute equal to into double quote. I can write property and value. This is our selector. This is our attribute. Inside that attribute again I have to write property and value color red. This is an inline CSS. End of h1, end of body tag, end of HTML tag. In case of embedded or internal CSS, I need to write style as a tag. And this style tag should be in the head tag. This style tag should be in the head tag. So inside head tag, style I can use as a tag in the head tag, and here I can write selector and our declaration block. For example, h1 here color red. Then inside body tag, whenever I use h1 tag, this is an internal CSS. This is an internal CSS. End of h1, end of body tag. In internal CSS, style I can use as a tag inside head tag, and in body tag, wherever I use this h1, this selector, I can get the text of h1 with red color because I declared here h1 with red color text. In case of external CSS, I need to write two files. First file will be HTML file and second file will be CSS file. External, in the name itself it indicates. External means I have to write CSS externally, not inside HTML. But I need to call this file in HTML file. So here in head tag, I need to use other tag that is link. Where I need to I need to call three attributes in link tag. First is relation, second is type, and third is href. These attributes I have to write for this link tag. Relation means what is the relation? CSS. Sorry for disturbance. What is the relation? Here, style sheet. The relation value should be style sheet. The type of the file will be text or CSS. These values are same for all files. And third attribute href, this is file path. This is what? File path. Means with which name I have saved the CSS file, that file name dot CSS. For example, I save the file as sample.css. Then I have to write here name of that file, that is sample.css in link tag. Then end of the head tag, inside body tag, whenever I write this h1 tag, the external CSS, end of body tag. Whenever I call this h1 tag, whatever the properties and value I wrote here, that will be displayed. So I need to create two files. First is HTML file, another file CSS file. How can I write the CSS file? I can write like this: h1 in bracket curly braces color red, semicolon, font size 20 pixel. What is the meaning of this line of code? This, it means whenever I use h1 element or h1 tag in HTML file, the text inside this h1 tag will be in red color and the font size of the text will be 20 pixel. So whenever I want to save this file, I have to save this file with how we save this HTML. Same like that, we have to save this file. Write name of the file, for example sample.css. We need to save this file with .css. If we wrote only sample, then our file will be text file. If you write .html, our file will be HTML file. So to say, we have to save the file with sample.css. Sample.css. We will see one by one example. We will see one by one example. First, inline CSS. See, this is our first line, doc type HTML, which is informative, just to inform the browser what type of document we are going to display. Next, from HTML tag, we are going to write our programming code. HTML head, this is again informative tag. This is title, sample inline CSS. End of title, end of head. In body tag, what I did, I wrote here H1, our element H1 space style. In inline CSS, style is used as an attribute equal to value of the attribute is again property and value. What is the property? I want to change color colon red. This is sample page. End of H1, end of body tag. Now we will see what will be the output. Okay. In output, open web browser, open file, inline CSS. This is sample page. If I made any changes here, for example, I write font weight 300. See, it will reduce the bold. First it was more bold, now it reduce bold 300. If I remove this one, it is again more bold. This is the example of inline CSS. Style is used as an attribute. Next is internal CSS. In internal CSS, what we did here, style is used as a tag. Style is used as a tag and we declare that tag in the head tag. We declare that tag in a head tag. For example, here style H1 color green, border double. End of style tag. Inside body tag, I just simply wrote H1 tag. This is sample page for internal CSS. If we run here, execute here, this is sample page for internal CSS. Next, in external CSS, what we need to write? We need to write two files. First, HTML file and second one is CSS file. This is CSS file. See, CSS file is simple. What I did, just I wrote here selector and here is our declaration block. In declaration block, these are the properties. First, color blue, second, font style italic. And in HTML file, what I need to do, I need to use link tag. In this link tag, I will here increase the tag. I need to use link tag. In this link tag, again three attributes I need to use, which first is relation. What is the relation? Style sheet. Which type of file it is? Text or CSS type of file it is. And href means reference of the file. Here the file whatever we create by we created by which name? External CSS. We saved the file with external CSS.css. The name of that file should be here. And inside body tag, again I use h1 tag. This is sample page for external CSS. So what will be the output? We'll check this external CSS. Execute HTML file. This is sample page for external CSS. See what the style I applied. I applied color blue and font style italic here. See, this is sample page for CSS. If I remove this font style italic, is there any change? See, it removed that italic font style. Like this, we need to write the program. So, what is the difference between inline CSS, internal CSS and external CSS? In inline CSS, we use style as an attribute. In embedded or internal CSS, we use the style as a tag within the head section of same file, same HTML file. In external CSS, we create externally CSS file in that whatever the selector, whatever the properties we want to display, we will write in that file. We save that file with .css extension, and in HTML file we use link tag which we displayed or which we write in head section, where we need to use 3 attributes. These 3 attributes, out of that 2 attributes have constant values. These values will not change for any other programs also. Relation, style sheet, type, text or CSS type of file, and this value will be changed according to name of the file. Whatever the name of the file we would give, that we have to write here. Next, here if instead of using this h1, if I want to use my own selector, if I want to use my own selector without using this built-in selector, how can I do this? I can do that by using ID selector or class selector. ID selector or class selector means instead of using h1, why I need this ID or class selector? If I write h1 color red, then whenever I use this h1 tag inside the body tag, every time text color will be red. But I don't want same color every time. I don't want same color every time. At that time, I want to use other color. If sometime I want to use other color, at that time I can use my own selector, that is either ID or class. How can I define it? I can define it by using hash symbol. ID selector I can define by using hash symbol, and here the name whatever I want to give. Name heading 1. Name, hash heading 1, color red. So when I want to use this heading 1, what I need to do? Suppose I am writing here h1, h1. I can call this selector and value of the selector like this: h1 id equal to, in double quote, heading 1. This is ID selector. This is ID selector. End of h1. and if I write here h1, this is normal heading. This is normal heading. End of h1. Now what will be the change in our program? What I did, instead of using h1, what I did, this is my own name. Means I given this name. Hash heading 1 color red. This is the syntax for ID selector to declare ID selector. Hash heading 1 in bracket. Whatever the contents in this determination declaration block, that will be same as previous. Color colon red. If you want to give other properties, you can differentiate it with semicolon. Next, whenever I want to use this selector, I need to use ID as an attribute. I need to use word ID as an attribute. ID equal to heading 1. This is ID selector. Again I use H1. This is normal heading. Means when I execute this program, then the text inside this H1 will be with red color. But the text inside this H1 is remain unchanged. It will not show any change. It is with by default, that is black color. If I want to use class selector, what is the difference? Class selector use will be same, but just difference is in declaration. For class selector, we use this period. Period means dot or full stop symbol. Dot, for example, heading 2. Heading 2, color green. Heading 2, color green. If I want to call this selector in, I will use here h2 tag, class equal to heading 2. This is class selector. This is class selector. Same in H2. This is normal heading. End of H2. What is the meaning of this line of code? I called here this selector, which I wrote here with dot. What we call it as period. This is hash symbol, this is period symbol, heading 2 color green. And whenever I want to call this selector, I need to use class attribute. We will see example. Here is the example. Heading 1. Heading 1. Here what I did? In style tag, I declared here ID selector, and in second line I declared here class selector. This is ID selector, this is class selector. ID selector indicated by hash, and this class selector denoted by period or dot or full stop. If I want to call ID selector, I have to use ID as an attribute inside any tag where I want to change color green and I want border double. I can use this ID equal to heading 1. And if I want to call this class selector, I need to use class attribute. Class equal to heading 2, example of class selector. And we will see here without using also. Without using. Here we will not use. This is example of ID selector. Normal heading. Normal heading. Same for this tag also. This will be H2. Normal heading. We will execute the program. See, example of ID selector, normal heading. Example of class selector, normal heading. What I did here, heading tag, color green, border double. See, color green, border double. Then here, heading 2, color red, font weight 100. Here, red color, font weight 100. Here, in H1, example of ID selector means this heading 1 styles are applied for this text. Example of selector. Here, normal heading. No, here web browser not applied any style tag. Here, heading 2. Example of class selector, that is green color text and size of the text. Sorry, weight means it removed the boldness of the text. And here normal heading, that is text with by default styles, is with only black color and bold, like this. Next, same again we have two selectors, that is, one is universal selector and other one is group selector. So what do you mean by universal selector? If I want to apply same size for all the web page, I want to apply same styles for overall the web page, then no need to use any ID selector, class selector or any other element as a selector name. I can use this star. This is known as a wildcard character. This is known as wildcard character, which is denoted by this star symbol. And we can write, what is the syntax? We can write it as wildcard character, and inside curly braces whatever the properties and value we want to display. And this one is example of group selector. Group selector means what? If I want to apply some some changes only for H1, H2 and P tag. H1, H2 and P tag. Then I want same changes for 3 tags. Then no need to write this H1 color red font weight 100, H2 color red font weight 100, P color red font weight 100. Instead of writing again and again same line of code, what I can do, I can write name of the selectors and that are differentiated by commas. And the code is color red font weight 100. Means for whenever I use H1 tag, H2 tag, P tag, the text color will be red and font weight will be 100. See, inside this body tag, for these 3 tags, this style will be applied. And this is 4th line, means span. Example, group selector. Here, this style will apply. We will see the example. See, example is like this. What is the code? Here, this is universal selector. What is this? This is universal selector, which is denoted by star symbol or wildcard character. which applied only for this tag. And these are the group. This is group selector. Group selector means the selector I wrote here in the group format. In the group format, which are separated by commas. So for these three tags, this line of code will apply. Color red, font weight 100. But it took border also. But it took border also. Why? Because color green. First it took color green, but here it override the value. Color become red. Next, font weight, it was by default first, but again I wrote here 100, so it became 100 pixel font weight. And the border, I haven't wrote any programming, any change for border, so it remains same. Here it remains same. So it took both of these styles, this one also and this one also. But whatever the properties are repeated here, it changed the value for that accordingly. Yes, first it took green, but after that again I changed it red, so it became red. And font weight, first it took by default, but after that it was 100, so it took 100. Then I haven't write any code for border property, so it keep the border property same, that is double. And for fourth one, it took only for this property, color green and border double, like this. So guys, this is all about CSS. CSS means cascading style sheet, which help us to reduce our work. We can change look and feel of several pages by changing a single source. To write CSS, we need selector and declaration block, which contains property and values. Type of CSS, three type of CSS. First is inline, second is internal or embedded, third is external CSS. In inline property, we use style as an attribute. In internal CSS, we use style as a tag within head section. And in external CSS, we create two files. First is with .html extension, second one is with .css extension. Our .html file is our normal file, and in .css file we have to write selector and declaration block, which having properties and values. Then our selectors are of again four types. Which are those? ID selector, class selector, universal selector and group selector. This one is universal selector. For universal selector, we use wildcard character, means star symbol. Then in group selector, we use different selectors, and that are separated by commas. In ID selector, we use hash symbol to determine ID selector, and in class selector we use dot, or we call it as period, means full stop symbol, to determine name of the class selector. If we want to call these selectors in any tag, any element, if we want to call ID selector, we need to write attribute name as ID equal to name of this selector. And if we want to call class selector, we need to write class as an attribute, and here name of that attribute. See, when we call that selectors, no need to write hash or dot here. This hash and dot just used to declare the selection, selectors, and when we call it is inside this body tag, no need to write these symbols, just keep it in mind. Okay, thank you guys.